Oh my goodness gracious.
Alright. We have blurred any graphic depiction of assassination in order to make this video widely available on YouTube and censored published network.
President's car is now turning off the L. Open limousine parade.
There's a cover-up that's about to happen.
I'm gonna mute all emojis.
Situation, Reed. Kennedy shot in head.
The assassination of a president, and then a scramble by the U.S. government to hide information from its people.
So much information was hid from the American public.
How many shots were fired? 3.
The question of who shot JFK and why has riveted America since that horrifying day 60 years ago. But over time, it's become clear that the FBI and CIA kept information hidden, not just from the public, but from the commission in charge of investigating the assassination.
Guys, the reason why I want to do this chat is that I watched the other guy's video. Let me know. I want to see this guy's take on it. See how big the difference changes in analysis, right? And what we can draw from the conclusion of two different parties analyzing from two different perspectives. I think that's
this
really
has
nice.
fueled an understandable doubt in the official account, including, by the way, Lyndon B. Johnson, the president who took JFK's place. Congress even came out in the 80s saying that this was probably a conspiracy. And the public ran wild with this. They came up with hundreds of suspects of who could have been involved in the assassination. Theories like this thrive when government authorities aren't transparent with their people. So let me show you how this happened. Let me explain the...
Here's my take. I also think that full transparency, not a good thing. A lot of things cannot be explained in a way people will understand, and things people just don't deserve to actually hear the way it is. Sorry. That is just the way things are.
The official story, and why that story has been hit with a wave of doubt over the decades. And explain that, unlike a lot of conspiracy theories, doubting the official story here isn't as crazy as you might think.
An example,
There are none.
This was a turning point in American history. People all of a sudden decided, I'm not sure they're telling us the truth.
JFK is this really symbolic character who lived during a very, very important time in American history. And the story really dives into the context of what it was like to be in America in the 60s. I'm really excited to dive in and show you all of this stuff. I need to thank the sponsor of today's video.
Huh? I'm sorry, dude. I was just talking to Trevor. Just a little bit, you know?
Sponsors allow us to do these super deep dives that take months to make with lots of different people. So thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring the video. I'm a true story of what happened to JFK. People loved John Kennedy. He was this good-looking guy who was always hanging out with his beautiful family, and he just seemed to instill a sense of confidence in people. Kennedy rode this positive perception up the ranks of American politics to become the 35th president. This was in the early 60s, when America was in a giant time of transition.
Well, this is a revolution, of course, that is sweeping our country now.
The U.S. was the global superpower and was locked in a Cold War with another empire a world away.
Right.
So JFK walks into the presidency to find his military and intelligence leaders causing a lot of trouble around the world. They had become very comfortable with dangerous secrets. They were funding wars, they were overthrowing governments in faraway countries, they were assassinating leaders that threatened American interests, and they were doing most of this totally in secret. By the way, if you want to know more about those CIA shenanigans, go watch the video where we map all the US coups. Anyway, JFK walks in and sees this as too much. He wants to rein in these spy and military leaders from what he sees as an abuse of American power. He ended up firing and demoting a bunch of these leaders, a lot of these intel and military guys who were plotting and executing covert operations around the world. And he continued to pursue, like, his ideal of world peace. He chose diplomacy over violence. When nuclear-armed missiles were found in Cuba, he slowed down the momentum towards a full-scale presence in Vietnam, and he shut down several of these covert operations that were being planned by the leaders around him. This caused great tension between JFK and America's military and spy leadership. All of this context is important when we look back on that day in November 1963.
Friday morning, 11:37. The president's jet lands at the Dallas airport. Friday morning, 11:37. The president's jet lands at the Dallas airport.
Oh, because wars make money?
President Kennedy and the Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson arrived to Dallas for a speech that the president was to give. He got in this open-top limousine with his wife Jackie and the Texas Governor John Connally, along with his wife Nellie. They rode through these streets, downtown Dallas lined with cheering spectators. And then gunshots rang out.
Kennedy apparently shot in head. Blood was on his head.
The shots hit the president in the neck and head, also wounding Governor Connally. The president was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead.
And very often you'll find a zipper hidden in the arm.
Fortnite.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. The president has rushed to Parkland Hospital.
Ding.
Within hours of the assassination, the prime suspect became this 24-year-old former Marine, a self-declared communist who had renounced his American citizenship and moved to the Soviet Union, where he then fell disenchanted with life in Russia and moved back to the US, eventually ending up on the 6th story of this building in Dallas where he worked and where he was on that morning in November where he aimed a rifle and shot the president.
Hold up, let me just see what he says. Didn't say anything yet.
His name was Lee Harvey Oswald. And after these shots rang out, he fled. While on the run, he shot and killed a Dallas police officer before hiding in a movie theater and then eventually being arrested at around 2:15 p.m. that day.
I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
There was to be a trial, and Oswald planned to plead not guilty, claiming the whole thing was actually a setup.
Huh?
Patsy, which is like an old-timey term for like the fall guy, the one who was set up. That same day, the vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, was rushed back to...
ready check, sorry, ready check, I do ready, and then I do, I think he says log out.
Did you know foreskin is dead?
Log?
Foreskin is dead.
Oh,
he is no longer with us. What a tragedy.
Plane, and sworn in as the new president of the United States before taking off and heading back to Washington. At the same time, the FBI, the top investigatory body in our country, descends onto Dallas. And very quickly, the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, who's a big part of the story, he comes to a conclusion as to what happened. This is before any investigation had really gone forth. And Hoover decides that Oswald absolutely was the one who did it. He was a communist sympathizer, he was a frustrated misfit, and crucially, he acted alone. There was no one else. Here's a phone call between Hoover and the new president, LBJ.
There's no question but that he is the man. Now, the fingerprints and things we have.
I'd like some legal representation. These police officers have not allowed me to have any.
What?
But luckily we have a justice system.
Isn't that illegal?
We find what the
hold up. Good?
What is he doing,
Facts
man?
actually say Oswald
is
was
he
going
farming
to
or
stand
something?
trial, where the evidence could be thoroughly examined, where the country could see for themselves who actually shot their president.
No shot.
And get closure on this horrifying event, where whoever did it could actually be brought to justice. But that never happened. 2 days after the assassination, while Oswald was being transferred from police headquarters to the county jail, a nightclub owner named Jack Ruby jumped out in front of the crowd of police officers and news reporters and shot Oswald.
What did they do?
He was quickly rushed to the hospital where he died soon after.
Some deaths in the
hospital where President Kennedy had died just 48 hours earlier.
Lee Oswald has been shot.
I think he got what he deserved if he's the one that did it.
It is difficult to say how long it will take for the full realization of what happened to really sink in.
With Oswald dead, there could be no trial, no real sense of justice. This left the government investigators, the FBI.
Chad, the reality is, we saw the other episode, right? And we saw a lot of the evidence. The evidence was really fucking shitty. The crime scene was treated as a joke. The protocols were breached across the board. Evidence was misplaced, changed in position. Some of it was just straight up lost entirely, right?
Mostly, with the opportunity to really own the narrative of what happened. The very next day, the Deputy Attorney General
that
sent
Lemino
a
video
to the
was
White House,
amazing.
stressing that the
It was
public must
insane.
be satisfied with
That's
this
an S
explanation
tier.
that Oswald acted alone. He didn't have co-conspirators that were still at large. This had to be the story, and I'll explain why in a sec. This memo also included some wisdom and kind of a foreshadow of what was going to happen over the next several decades, where the memo urges the White House to release as much information as possible to the public, so as to avoid public speculation. Just
hold on, one more thing to remember, okay, is that the information that the guy had, right? If you line it up with the job he had and the position that he had, end up being pretty much lucky, right? Because he didn't have the info beforehand, before getting that job into that building, right? And they rerouted the parade right under him, which is a complete fucking coincidence. If that didn't happen, no one could have gotten the shot off, right? And the shot was incredibly hard to hit. So, guys, I have no thing about this, okay? I'm not even conspirating about it. I just think that the whole thing is just crazy.
Much information as possible for the public, so as to avoid public speculation. Just remember that advice. Release the information to avoid public speculation. It's kind of the most important part of the story. We have these recently released phone recordings between the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, and the new president, LBJ. And we see in this phone call that the FBI actually didn't want a thorough investigation.
I think it would be very, very bad to have a rash of investigation. If you have three things looking, well, the only way we can stop them is probably to appoint a high level one to evaluate your report that I can select out of the government and tell the House and Senate not to go ahead with the investigation. Yes.
LBJ creates this group called the Warren Commission. And you can see in these phone calls, he was asking the FBI director who should be on the commission.
What do you think about Allen Dulles? I think he would be a good man.
Wait, did you catch that? Allen Dulles. He was the former director of the CIA. He's one of the guys that JFK fired after he tried to overthrow the Cuban government. And now he's about to be appointed to the committee investigating Kennedy's assassination.
Well, Jack, one more pause, Jack. Something important here, okay? Something that Disney said yesterday that's shocking and it's important. Sometimes these things are common and normal through all the governments or the presidencies, right? And they sound bad and maybe they are bad, but they're really common, right? So now I'm thinking, is this something that happens all the time? And
One
this is
example?
common, and it's
One
like, oh
example?
my god, this is happening, but it always happens.
No,
What is it?
This did
Not even
to
one
instill
example.
trust in the commission.
The new president appointed a commission of 7 prominent Americans to
I hate
investigate
this
the
guy on
whole
the top
affair.
left.
The special commission will have before it all
I think it's
evidence uncovered
what
by
do
the
you call
Federal
it?
Bureau of Investigation.
A
All
retard?
information available in the agency of the federal government.
The Warren Commission was given just 10 months to investigate this situation using the evidence that was mostly provided to them by the FBI. They produced this report, which essentially confirms the conclusion that J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, had come to in the hours and days following the assassination. That on November 22nd, the shots fired that killed the president and wounded the governor were fired by one guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. The report stresses that he acted alone. They say it very definitively. He, nor the person who killed him 2 days later, Jack Ruby, were a part of any conspiracy, domestic or foreign. All of the shots came solely from the 6th floor of this building. And crucially, there were only 3 shots fired, 3 bullets.
How many shots were fired? 3. Any of them fired at me? I know, all three.
This also isn't confirmed. From people on the ground themselves with the testimonies, because of memory or whatever, nobody fucking knows. Because bullets echo on the buildings, okay? And people hear one shot, and it was bing, bang, and they rehear the same shot. And
Edgy maxing, dude.
Even a paid professional, somebody who's
yeah.
firearms, it's somebody high-skilled military people or
That's
hunters
how you feel it.
don't even know and can barely tell how many shots, when he's like 1 or 2. It's just hard.
The report says that the first bullet likely missed the car completely, but that the second one did something very interesting. It first hit the president in the back and then exited his chest. It then entered through the governor's back, went through his rib, and then exited through his chest. But it wasn't done yet. It then entered his wrist, shattering the wrist bone, and then exited the wrist and went partially into the governor's leg. Whoa. Okay, it's quite the journey for one bullet. Oh, and the bullet in question, which just apparently made 7 wounds, supposedly looked like this, which some ballistic experts have said looks a little too pristine for a bullet that allegedly just went through 2 human bodies. And then, of course, the third bullet, according to the Warren Commission, was the one that delivered the fatal headshot to the president. This was the explanation that the Warren Commission came up with to explain all of the wounds that were found on the victims. All of this damage had to be done with just 3 bullets. And why just 3 bullets? Again, ask J. Edgar Hoover right after the assassination.
On that floor, we found the 3 empty shells that had been fired.
They only found 3 shells up on that 6th floor. So if all of this damage was done with more...
Okay, one reason why that is, that's because this crime scene was a fucking disaster. They took the bullets off the ground, right? And then they ended up putting them back in to take pictures and shit, and a bunch of stuff got misplaced. So that is just kinda...
More than 3 bullets, that would mean that there had to be more than one shooter. A conspiracy. But there couldn't be a conspiracy. Hoover had adopted this line of thinking right after the assassination. This assumption that it was just one guy. And that line of thinking endured into the Warren Commission. A commission that Hoover himself helped...
What did you guys say? No, we're still good, sorry.
The president assemble. In the end, the commission used a lot of cherry-picked evidence provided to them by the FBI that supported their already drawn conclusions. And in the process, they turned any focus away from exploring all the possibilities, including the possibility of a conspiracy. The report focuses almost entirely on one guy, Lee Harvey Oswald, and his 3 bullets.
One guy.
Who killed John F. Kennedy?
One guy. One guy.
Unequivocally,
One guy.
Was Oswald a member of a conspiracy? Commission answers, he acted alone.
They ignored witnesses that contradicted their stories. They ignored or modified the signed reports from surgeons and doctors who worked with President Kennedy immediately after he arrived to the hospital that said that the wounds in the president's neck chest area looked like they came in from the front, meaning not
Trevor?
from this building.
I'm gonna get something from Trevor. Yo, how do you like that? That little jump cut I did right there. That's some editing. And my lamp. Ah.
That was behind the president. In other words, the FBI and the Warren Commission ignored the advice from that memo that admonished the government to release all of the facts. In my mind, this was the biggest mistake and the root of all the conspiracy theories that exist today. The question I had in all of this is why? Why not do a proper investigation that explores the possibility?
Chad, the gun that was used to fire the bullet, Chad, I mean, it's a rifle, right? Isn't that possible, though, that the bullet actually did that and actually was in that condition? I think it's like a high-velocity ammo that just there's still a possibility it legitimately did that.
possibility that this was done by a group of conspirators instead of just one guy? For me, the answer to this question has a lot to do with the greatest fears that the American government and people were facing in the early 1960s.
Champ, rifle ammo, whether 5.56, 7.62, will pierce an entire house to run through. That's just what it is. And at the time, yeah, it's not the same technology, but still, a rifle would probably high-powered. It is what it is. It's a fucking rifle, dude. I think it's possible.
First, we have to remember that 1960s America was right in the heart of the Cold War, a time of constant vigilance, of fear of nuclear apocalypse, of extreme tension between these two superpowers. If this assassination was seen as an attempt to topple the government, or even worse, if it had been organized by the Soviet Union or its fellow communist regime in Cuba, that would create a sense of panic among the American public. It would be a very different situation than a 24-year-old communist sympathizer acting alone. A believed conspiracy would also create pressure from the American public to strike back, which could lead to an escalation with another nuclear-armed nation.
Brick
Oh,
huts.
and the CIA also had an incentive to keep an investigation from being too widespread. At the time, they were secretly conducting all of these operations to assassinate Cuba's leader, Fidel Castro. This was a big deal, and it was a big secret at the time. Any deep investigation into possible conspiracy with Cuba might reveal that the CIA is trying to assassinate Fidel Castro, which would not be good for the CIA. So one way to read all of this, the memos, the rushed conclusion, the emphasis on Oswald acting alone, the need for there to only be 3 bullets, you can see this as a bunch of government officials scrambling to keep the American
Oh, we're not even ready yet, man. Chat, stop.
American public calm to
Alright.
make sure that pandemonium doesn't break out,
I was gonna
all
say
while
something,
reducing the possibility
but,
of
you continue.
geopolitical escalation with the Soviet Union. You can see this in some of these phone calls, where the new president is deeply worried about keeping the American people united around a simplified narrative of what happened. He's worried that if alternative theories get out, it could threaten our entire system. So their tactic for doing this was to hijack the narrative, to suppress and influence the investigation, and make it very simple. Oswald did it, that's it. Here's the problem though. Eventually, people will do the math and realize that the government has been keeping the full picture from them. And that's exactly what happens next. So the Warren Commission files its report with the official story of what happened. But soon after they do so, members of the Warren Commission themselves come out and say, like, they don't actually believe the story that the Warren Commission just put out. Especially when it comes to the key assertion that 1 bullet was responsible for causing 7 wounds.
I could not convince myself that the same bullet struck Wilson.
You mean that you yourself weren't convinced about the single bullet theory, which...
No, I wasn't convinced.
Governor Connolly, the one who was sitting in front of JFK, and the one who was supposedly shot by that 1 single bullet, he disagreed with the story.
I understand there's some question in the minds of the experts about whether or not we could both have been hit with the same bullet. I just don't happen to believe that.
Even the new president, LBJ, wasn't totally convinced. I mean, he was kind of secretive about it, but he eventually did come out and tell a reporter from The Atlantic that he thought that this was a conspiracy, that it was Cuba retaliating against the U.S. for all of these CIA attempts to assassinate their leaders.
Fake.
Hold up. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yo, I gotta be better with this. I'm gonna have to do this thing on monitor.
This was not good for the Warren Commission and their story. Then, 12 years after the assassination, this full uncut version of a strip of film that shows the assassination of JFK, it finally airs on national TV.
It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy.
This was the first time that Americans could see solid visual evidence of this event. But why hadn't it been released earlier? To some, this film contradicted the official account from the Warren Commission.
It's fabricated.
And it sparked this new demand for real
Just
answers
like the moon
from
landing.
a government that kept behaving
Just,
like it was hiding something. All
the
of
Hollywood
this is coinciding
prediction, so
with a time in American history where Americans are losing faith in the federal government.
How can people fall for
You just
this?
see
It's
this
so
massive,
dumb.
like, nosedive. All of the CIA's covert operations.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it. I gotta log
It's
out
so
and then
obviously
do it. Okay,
fabricated.
chat. What if it's just that? Them changing the narrative at the
You-
time,
you can-
not to fucking
when you
not for things to go.
you have these videos
haywire, right?
of these
And then they kept
supposed
lying about it
moon
for people
landings.
Not to lose trust
They're not
too
true.
much at the same time, because they
It's
know
the
they were
CIA.
wrong,
They
were
they
wrong,
all
had to double down.
orchestrated.
What if it's just
Of
that
course, they can just easily
bad?
fake all this.
The truth of our emotion, but I mean, if it. No, I'll tell you in a minute. I have an idea about this. Hold up. Let me just get into this and then we can get the fuck in there.
Die!
Did I already reset or not? He's ready to go.
Man, what's the fucking video?
Are starting to come to light. The country is mired in this endless war in Vietnam. The president's people were just found spying on their political
Snapping
opponents in a
turtle.
hotel in DC. Like, the government has not earned our trust at this point.
xQc
people are like,
Rule
it wouldn't be a far
34.
stretch that the government was also
Where's
behind
the link?
assassination of JFK. This was furthered by
Give me
the
the link,
suspicious
dude.
assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. Martin Luther King,
I need that.
the apostle
Come
of
on, man. Wait,
nonviolence.
what was his
Martin
name?
Assassination of JFK. This was further our stretch that the not earned our trust. Found spying on their political opponent.
Meme Overlord 69. Give me the link, please. Please give me the
JFK.
link.
This was furthered
If
by
you see
the
this,
suspicious
give me the link.
assassination
Come
of
on,
Martin
dude.
Luther King Jr.
Give me the link.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
This was all too much, and the people wanted answers. So in a shining moment of redemption of our democracy, Congress responded by forming a committee that reopened the investigations into these two assassinations, JFK and MLK. This committee did a real investigation. They actually were earnest about this, and they confirmed what a lot of Americans were already feeling, which is that the Warren Commission's investigation didn't sufficiently look into the possibilities of a conspiracy. They say it point blank. They were way too fixated on their assumptions that it had to be this lone gunman that did it, and that their conclusions were way too definitive. And then they specifically call out the FBI and the CIA for withholding information from the investigation. One FBI agent even testified that he was ordered by his superiors to destroy evidence, in this case a letter that Oswald had written to the FBI.
And he handed it to me and he said, Oswald's dead now, there can be no trial. Here, get rid of this.
Why was the FBI asking its agents to destroy evidence? The committee concluded that it was a, quote, high probability that it was two gunmen.
I mean, dude, okay, hold up. Just one thing. Dude, the guy is dead, right? What if he wrote some unhinged or reverse conspiracy that was gonna inflame everybody with no answers, with no answers to give to the people and shit, and just muddy the waters on purpose? Like, imagine dude this. I'm just talking.
Wait, I know.
I was like,
It was
what if it was
Donald.
some fucking insane
It was
shit,
Donald
though,
Trump.
right? And the guy's dead.
He did this so he
they
can
didn't
become
fucking-
president.
You know?
That fired
And
at
he
JFK,
failed
and
anyway.
that it was probably a conspiracy.
That's it.
That's what
I
it
know,
says.
I know,
But they
I know,
stopped
I know.
short of trying to
It was
determine
Donald.
who that other gunman was or who had organized the
But what if
conspiracy.
not, you're right.
And then they once again make the recommendation that all of the information on this topic be made public.
Isn't it time for the American people to at least know what happened at 12:30 p.m. in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963?
Quick caveat, the committee's conclusion that the assassination was probably a conspiracy relied heavily on one piece of evidence, which was the sound recording from that day, where you can hear gunshots and you hear more than three, and it kind of inferred that there were like multiple shooters. This evidence was later challenged and kind of debunked by the FBI, but also a different research facility that basically said this sound recording wasn't even gunshots. It wasn't even recorded during the time of the assassination. But to me, the whole conspiracy thing was not actually the most important part of this committee's report. The most important part was that they confirmed that the Warren Commission had been cherry-picking evidence and hiding stuff from the American people. After the Congressional Committee confirmed to the American people that the FBI and the CIA had been hiding evidence, the conspiracy theories rose up once again, culminating in this movie in the early 90s that paints an alternative picture of what could have happened here. A shadowy government conspiracy to kill the president, or at least a conspiracy to cover up the real story.
Oswald, Ruby.
Chat, I told you all these videos, chat. My take is that it's just as simple as like, it's just one guy that just try to wrap up the fucking
one guy.
The evidence thing and just try to just give an answer, just to get it out, get it done with, even though it's flawed and bad, just to fucking finish it up so it doesn't take too much time. That's my take.
Cuba, the mafia, keeps them guessing like some kind of parlor game, prevents them from asking the most important question: why? Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
The film was largely conjecture, kind of based on some elements of truth. And some might argue that it was irresponsibly misleading to like show the American public like, hey, the government killed the president. But hey, in a world where the government isn't being clear and forthright to the American people, this film felt like a response. Maybe the government was hiding the truth. Maybe the government did do it, or maybe they're just covering something up. We don't know because they haven't released information. This was a popular movie, and people latched on to the theories presented in this film.
The notion that there was more than one set of shooters, the way that it's presented physically in this movie is highly convincing.
Make it about race.
Public pressure got so intense that Congress
like
finally decided to do what they should have done in the 60s, which is force all of these agencies to release all of the information. So in 1992, Congress passes...
I mean, the witness testimonies were all really fucky.
Yo, anybody have a cat named Trevor?
People didn't remember right.
If you have a cat named Trevor,
everything they got was
a perfect name.
It was a disaster.
It's a perfect
name. That would lay the foundation for releasing all of the documents related to the assassination by October 2017. That was the deadline. They assembled a committee and gave them several years to go through all of the documents and re-examine the official account and prepare these documents for release to the public. We actually talked to the chairman of that committee.
I was nominated by President Clinton to chair the Assassination Records Review Board.
In the process of going over all of this documentation, this review board found some more inconsistencies and discrepancies and instances of potential cover-up. Like the autopsy. There's an entire video I could make about just the autopsy and the missing brain and all of this. But the crux of it is that what the doctors and surgeons saw moments after the president was shot, they recorded and they like wrote down. But then what the official autopsy record actually looked like when it was released was something very different. The way the wounds were described, where the wounds were, what the brain looked like, all of this stuff had been changed or modified. The photos themselves had potentially been changed.
Wait.
And then the brain fied. The photo.
Oh, me too, man. Me too.
Photos themselves had potentially been changed, and then the brain itself like literally went missing. It's like unaccounted for. So anyway, that's an entire rabbit hole that you can go down if you want.
Missing brain is crazy, but it is not too uncommon for a fucking rifle headshot because of entry, because of exit wound and shit. What happens with the brain is what it is. So, yo, Nick.
Giga Chad.
Releasing all these records also revealed that the CIA and FBI had been keeping tabs on Oswald's whereabouts, which maybe makes sense because he was like a...
I'm not even the bullshit. There's a good video about the anatomy of headshots on YouTube. You should go watch it. It's kind of dark to watch on YouTube, to watch on stream. Show what happened with headshots with a rifle because of the what it does and how fast it comes in.
My video is gonna get age restricted again.
As it goes in and out with the
One
gas
of my videos already got
expands,
age restricted.
It is like the brain is gonna fucking fly out.
And nobody fucking watched that
Soviet
shit.
Sympathizer, but like,
wait,
why
now
didn't
it's
we know that
actually age
before?
restricted.
We learned that the Secret Service had destroyed documents.
Because nobody
the
watched the video,
motorcade
and
route sheets
it got
that
age
they had,
restricted
the
anyway.
surveillance tapes
It was
from
just
that
one
day,
guy.
they had destroyed
One guy
them.
watched it. One guy from YouTube watched it, and they age restricted it. Come on, dude. If you're watching this and you're from the YouTube headquarters, nobody's seeing this.
But a lot of stuff
nobody's seeing this. So please don't age restrict it.
Control of the investigation a couple weeks after the assassination, and all of his records are just unaccounted for.
Now, did he destroy them all? Maybe. I don't know. There's no real record of that. So you still have that previously destroyed issue.
In total, they finally released 5 million documents by 2017. Basically everything, except for a few thousand documents that the CIA still refuses to release. Why? Guys, come on. You can find this whole trove of JFK.
What if it's just people that did a shit job and they want to get blamed by the people and they want to get harassed? Like, what if they just did a shit fucking job? Like, yeah, man, I touched the evidence, they just did bad.
It was Hassan.
Bad fucking job, flat out.
It's Hassan. He's canceling this.
Website.
He's censoring them.
But here's the craziest part of all of this.
No, not yet.
Even after 5 million documents were released to the American public, to a public that was like hungry for like conspiracy, still there is no solid smoking gun evidence in any of this that points to a conspiracy, that points to anyone other than Lee Harvey Oswald as the person who assassinated the president by himself, acting on his own. Now, the evidence may exist somewhere, but it's been destroyed or whatever. The point is, the government could have released these 5 million documents in the 60s. Like, they could have done this back when people wanted it, back when they should have, and it wouldn't have changed their official story, and it would have satiated an American public that was skeptical of their government. At this
No, they're just gonna find any little thing
acting on his own. Now the evidence may exist somewhere,
can use
but it's
to
been
make some stupid
the point is, the government could have released
logical arguments that has fallacy in it.
Like they could have done this back
but
when
they're
people
just
wanted
gonna,
it, back when they should have.
It's not gonna satisfy anybody. It's only gonna satisfy some NPCs
you know what?
that was,
I don't know, some stupid NPCs that don't think for themselves. But the actual Giga Chats that are very skeptical and never agree with anybody, they
garbage or whatever, it would just muddy the waters. That's my take. Sorry.
Yeah,
skeptical.
And they just
at this point
pick
though,
any stupid little
I think
thing.
it's too late. The feeling that the government was hiding something has now sunk deep into the American psyche.
So just not saying anything, not releasing anything is better.
They get the full scope, and they're still wrong about everything somehow. When things are complicated into a lot of fucking data, people get everything that they want and need, and they're still fucking wrong. It's insane.
Kind of are like the JFK assassination. Yes, something was up there. I'm not really sure they're ever going to regain our trust on this one because of how much hiding of information there was throughout all of these decades. So, on the internet, all around, from people who are actually pretty credible, you have alternative explanations that abound. Maybe it was LBJ.
He added a whole 10 minutes?
Or what I believe is perhaps
Yo, he has actually transforming this.
Wanted to take out
he added a whole 10 minutes on top of the video. And I add a whole 10 seconds.
Of course, the idea that Cuba did it. I mean, that's what LBJ, the president after JFK, thought. Like, he was like, it was probably Cuba because we've been trying to assassinate their leader. The point is that because of the information vacuum left by the CIA and the FBI holding back evidence from the American people, people started to look at the evidence they did have and grasp at any evidence they could find for conspiracy. They started connecting the dots of the witnesses who met mysterious or suspicious deaths. Many theorists will fixate on this mysterious man holding an umbrella in this video on a sunny day, maybe giving the signal to a second shooter. It's all very tantalizing, and some of it is actually valid as like
he is him, man,
for further investigation. But despite a lot of really fishy stuff, I have not seen any solid evidence that proves.
Guys, I'm sorry to say this.
Magneto?
You're getting mad at me. Guys, a lot of people chat are allergic to the sun, and they my grandma has a fucking umbrella in sunlight all the time. All the time.
An alternative story to the one that was told.
It works as
sunscreen. That Lee Harvey Oswald was the guy who did it, and he acted alone. I think it's very plausible that there could be some conspiracy. I think we will never know because we simply don't have the evidence. One thing I do know for certain, though, is that the moment this investigation turned into an effort to stifle information and influence the facts towards one conclusion, it laid the foundation for...
Guy goes next. Some guy goes to a Trump rally or some shit, wearing a fucking Ronald McDonald outfit. Something happens, and then it's 60 years of fucking... Dude, Why was he Ronald McDonald? What the fuck is this? What is going on? Like,
for the public
dude,
to turn this into a cesspool of speculation. Again, I keep going back to that feeling of being lied to by your government. It's very potent. It sticks with you. It creates fertile ground for conspiracy theories of all kinds to sprout. Because when you feel like you're being lied to by your own democracy, by your own leaders, no matter the reason or justification, it makes you feel like you're on your own. Like no one's got your back, and that you are the one who needs to find the real truth.
Yeah, but that's just even if you don't lie, that's the same.
And fucking Earth not being flat. Whenever you give everybody, it doesn't matter, dude. It's gonna be fake because I don't know how to analyze data. Dude, I mean, the people is fucking brain dead. Fuck the people, man. Fuck us. Fuck me too, man.
To me, it's that
one clip, man.
That the most enduring conspiracy theories find their footing.
That one
the people
clip.
Are fucking brain dead.
One
Dude,
clip.
It's why I hate conspiracies.
No.
For the people, by the people, but the people are retarded. Wait, why is there
interesting.
A whole minute more?
That video was
more he's playing WoW. He's playing WoW.
This was more on the side of conspiracy than it just being what it was or what it is compared to the other one.
I've never played WoW
I don't mind
before.
the nuanced viewpoints. There is quite a bit of gaps in what he says. Because there's one problem a lot. Lemino cleared by a long shot.
Yeah,
okay.
Obviously.
Why?
Lemino was S tier.
Because
this one's like a
Lemino
B.
does bring the fact up that,
B, and now with the reaction on top of it, it's like an A.
Was just shit.
That's nice.
The witness testimony.
Yeah, so this video is like an A. That's pretty. That's pretty
full
decent.
Scheme. There are like full detailed accounts that are completely different from one another. From the people that are at the same spot, multiple.
But this video is pretty nice.
The
it's a
problem
B.
is that a lot of it is garbage.
And this one with him in it and these guys in it.
In today's standards,
that's an A.
And shit of like reporting and investigation. I don't know. I think it's unfair to do a juxtaposition.
That's it.